Jeff Cohen, Chief Business Development Officer at Skai. We're in Chicago today filming Retail Media Thursday with Kelly Gerrard of Marshall Associates. We're going to be at the Flamingo Bar at the corner of Adams and Clark. Let's go check it out. All right, Kelly, you are recently married.
Yes.
You are on Retail Media Thursday, and you haven't been for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I thought it would be great to talk about how much our industry has changed since you've been on. We'll put a link to your older episode. But in the last 3 or 4 years, this industry has changed almost exponentially. As an agency owner, as a manager of brands, how have you guys kind of navigated that change, and how has that change maybe changed the way you do business today compared to how you were a few years ago?
Yeah, I feel like when I was here a few years ago, back in Old Town, at the time I remember we were maybe a year into using Skai.
Yeah.
And at that time it felt like we were getting our arms around. I think when we first were onboarding, it was kind of the walk or the crawl, walk, run stages. We were still kind of trying to get our arms around somewhere in the middle of all those, right? And I feel like we used Skai at the time mostly for kind of organizing our accounts, trying to understand how do we look at data all in the same place, and that has stayed through. So we still use all of those things, using different methodologies within Skai to look at our data holistically and our programs of our media spends holistically. But now, really the last 18 months even, I would say, the emphasis on, well, what's ahead? What's years from now? Or how do we get ahead of whatever could be missing, right? Yeah. And the advantages that we could be gaining now that will benefit us down the road. I feel like that's what it's completely turned to. And so, for my team, it's been less about, handling more accounts or handling just different retailers to get experience, and now more about how can you exceed in your role by going deeper and getting more efficient and going that one layer, kind of peeling the onion back one layer further. And that's been a huge change from a few years ago, where especially the use of Skai was, organization and understanding of certain bid changes we could make, and now it's really that deeper analytical machine, I would say, and how we use it.
And you and I met a few years back before I had joined Skai, through a mutual connection who worked at your company. But I'm curious, if we even go a step deeper, maybe what's something that you used to do a couple years ago that you can't do anymore and you miss, right? Or what's something that you used to do a couple years ago and you're happy you're not doing anymore?
I would say one big thing is just analysis, the level of analysis that we can do today versus then. Back when I first started using Amazon ads or performance ads or whatever it may be, you're sitting there exporting data out of those platforms, right, all day. And it's, I remember even for me at least starting at Marshall, you can only go for as far back as a couple months ago, and we had to manually export that data at the start of each month for the month prior so we could have a whole year. It was crazy, the amount of just data gathering it felt, and that only let you go so far, right? Into keyword level data, let's say, could only go one layer deep. Whereas now, I can go on to Skai or even tools generally, you can look at 5 years of data and trends, and not just what keyword was it, but what search term was it, and how did that change between peak season 3 years ago to now. And then tying all that together, right? Using Celeste and using the analytics to kind of help tell the story. How have things changed? And having that look back has been crazy. It's one thing I don't miss about those days, for sure. I guess one thing I do miss sometimes is a little bit of the simplicity of the offerings on some platforms. It's both a blessing and a curse, right? Where the more things get complicated, the more options we have, and the more advantage Marshall, Skai can achieve together by being experts in those things. But at the same time, it's almost like you can't keep up with the amount of releases that happen. So that has been a challenge, but also an exciting opportunity at the same time.
Yeah, I think when I started at Amazon the first year, there was something like 18 or 20 releases, and the last year when I left, there were over 200.
Oh my gosh.
Right, and that's a challenge. And one of the things I always think about is when Amazon comes out with something new as an agency, you have to you have to figure out what it is. You have to figure out how to implement it. You have to figure out whether you want to implement it, which clients you need to implement it for, and then you can implement it into your clients. And so one thing that I was always kind of maybe evangelizing internally at Amazon was that there's a lag between features coming out and agencies being able to implement them across their whole portfolio of business. Let's talk a little bit about AI. I want to kind of hear your personal AI journey, right? Are you using any of these tools, whether it's in your day-to-day business life or in your day-to-day personal life? You just got married. Were you using it to put together any of your wedding stuff? How's your personal journey with AI been?
Well, I would be lying if I said I didn't ask AI to help me draft good thank you notes, how to use tools for thank you notes. But no, I think in terms of the use, we've adopted Claude on our team as a kind of an integration among, and obviously then have integrated it with MCP with Skai, and then also with our internal analytics that does a lot of their sales for other retailers like Home Depot, Wayfair. And so we've been really trying to implement Claude among our teams and workflows, and how that's kind of come to life is us really being extremely picky about certain prompts and certain guides that we give in certain projects, and roll those things out very slowly. And one thing we do is to never have Claude recommend or be the owner, I guess, of recommending action, right? That needs to still be with the brains on the account, and I think that's similar to how we use Celeste. We'll have Celeste recommend certain opportunities or look for things we could miss in the data, but then we need to be the end owners of the recommendation, of the action, of the reporting out. So that's been kind of the caveat that Marshall's taken in terms of the approach. Yeah,
it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about now you have so much data, an individual can't process it all, right? You can't find all of when you had one ad type and you had 12 months worth of data, you could identify trends on your own. But when you have all these different ad types and all these different retail media networks and all these SKUs, it's hard to find the meaning within that. And so it sounds like you're using AI to kind of push that meaning up and making maybe the work of your team more valuable in what they're doing, and kind of automating the day-to-day function of gathering and sifting through the data.
The sifting through, and even just organizing and visualizing things, effectively. Like we have a client where we represent them over 15 different publishers. And that is over 200,000 unique ads, let's say, And so I can just export all that data out. You have Celeste give some input, and then also have Claude help visualize some of this information for us. And bringing those things together would take my team hours just to put up a chart, of certain trends that we're seeing. And now trying to have Claude digest all that information across that many line items, and let alone ad types and all those things.
So I'm curious to go a little deeper, and you kind of shared a little bit about how you're using it to manage accounts. How are you using it to manage internal teams? How are you teaching people in your company how to prompt Claude correctly? What's that internal transformation look like?
It starts, I would say, on our end with a very clear list of at least our guidelines, Marshall's brand guidelines, how we speak to clients.
Are you building skills and tools within Claude?
Yes, and we have, our playbook, our internal playbook, where this is how we want our team to analyze a business. So if you come in on Monday, we have a decision tree, on how to look at your business. Starts with total sales and works its way, down. Pricing, buy box, and ads is obviously a huge branch of that.
All the things that have made you successful in the history of your business.
Exactly. That has been uploaded and kind of sits with everyone's Claude, That is kind of its guiding principles, you could say. And then, we'll have certain decks that we decks or analysis or whatever it is, that we consider best in class. Those are also ingested into Claude as examples of the way we want to communicate. Even little things like, do we call it POS sales, or do we call it ad spend or cost, or whatever, whatever it may be, what's our language? And ensuring that both in Skai, in Claude, in Marshall, day-to-day terminology, that there's consistency, and that Claude then responds with that level of consistency has been a big one among teams.
Gotcha.
For sure.
Was there pushback from your team?
I would say, in the sense when I said, do you want to save time doing, the summary slide of a deck? Definitely not. I think the pushback actually came more from management of, we need to ensure that the decision making is not on Claude.
Gotcha.
We are here to use our brains, and we have to be the human intervention of anything, right, that Claude might be recommending.
So it's really maybe the beginning really started at like the corporate governance of the accounts, of what information is going to be fed in, how it's going to be fed in, how decisions are going to be made. Was everybody in your company kind of experimenting on their own, and then you had to kind of bring corporate guidance to that, or was everybody waiting for the company to kind of tell them what to do?
It would be the latter for sure, and we're still in those phases.
Yeah.
So I'd say we're rolling things out as we feel comfortable, certain analysis that we do, certain prompts, certain takeaways, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was the second. People were kind of waiting for a little bit of guidance. I think that's how.
Permission, maybe.
A little bit of permission too.
Yeah.
We didn't let everyone have access day one. It was management, myself, VPs, that started to mess around in there and create like those questions of like, what if I was a brand, do I feel good or bad, right, about the deliverable, the output that that Claude just created with all of our inputs.
Gotcha.
And so I would say that was a big part of it, was months of the leadership teams being in there and being like Claude's biggest critic in a way. And I would say that was a big we have to feel really comfortable before we put that in the hands of our employees.
Which makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting to watch that amongst company involvement, right? We've seen the same thing at Skai. And there's this eagerness to want to get in and use tools. But there's also what can I use and how can I use it and what data can I put where, and a lot of those things that need to be defined by the business to protect the accounts that you have and the contracts you have with those accounts.
Yeah, just integrity of Marshall, right, and how we think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think having our identity be kind of at the core of it, having just that talk, like our general talk track, our decision tree, has been really the key to all that, keeping kind of on the right tracks.
So as you've gone through this transformation, are you having like weekly lunch and learns? Like, how are you sharing amongst your teams what individual learnings they may have?
So on the ad team specifically, we have kind of weekly touch bases around this, where we prompt and encourage everybody to kind of come with some specific prompts or learnings that went well, and that could be as easy as, hey, this search term report is 500,000 rows long. Trying to understand maybe some trends that are not obvious just by sorting highest to lowest, right, and spend. Could be that easy. And also could be something like I described. Help me with an omnichannel review of these 15 publishers, right? So it could be more complex, but definitely those kind of weekly lunch and learn, weekly, I would say, like touch bases with the broader team, and then the leadership having specific projects within Claude that then can be adopted in the workflows of everyone else. That's
so basically like once one of you kind of does something, you audit it, you gain confidence in it, then you're sharing it with the other teams and kind of rolling it out as a company-wide. And are you finding that you're getting, like one of the terms in the industry that I've heard a lot lately is that builders are emerging, right? People who are going into co-work and are writing their own, full autonomous scripts, which can stop at whatever point you want, but building their own scripts. Are you finding that your company is starting to kind of get a separation between those that are maybe more agentic and builders and those that are needing a little more coaching?
100%. And it's everyone, the right brain, left brain a little bit, right? And we all probably have both. But definitely, I would say so at Marshall, we have our kind of insights team, and they're in-house developers. And that team has built our Marshall Insights tool that connects with Skai, connects with Claude. So all those things kind of work together. And that's the team that we're obviously looking towards for guidance.
It's funny, that team was like the small team, and I think in the future, we'll get to that in a minute, might be like the big team.
Totally. 100%. And just giving us the tools so that we're not, I think it's easy for you or me or marketers to kind of feel like we have to be absolute experts on advertising, on promoting a new product, of accounting and finance numbers, right? Everything. And so when it comes to this, having that skill set internal at Marshall has been a big skill set of ours.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the reason why I wanted to get into this conversation is that I think that a lot of people in your situation or even just working in agencies are feeling the same thing, right? When I get into conversations and I have two people from two different companies talking about it and one person says something like that, the other person goes, oh, thank you. That's how I've been feeling as well. I'm curious, as you go to a lot of industry events, are you finding that when you talk to your peers that you guys are ahead, you're behind, maybe you feel behind, but then you actually realize you're ahead? How do you kind of judge what's happening versus the noise, right? Because on LinkedIn, it seems like everybody's an expert and ahead versus the reality of what's actually being implemented into the business.
Totally. I would say that one advantage I do feel like Marshall has that leans into this is that we're a boutique agency. And because of that, we can kind of afford our teams to have a lot of resources, right? We don't have to really do things that with worry of it scaling to thousands of employees.
Right.
So because of that, everyone on our e-commerce team has full access, business access to Claude. And obviously it's within reason of parameters that we set. But even just that, plus our access to Skai and Celeste, let's say, that's giving any individual, whether it's a specialist that's a few years out of college or a year out of college, or a senior manager or our VP, our president, gives those people the same tools, right? Like to succeed, which I think unlocks like a crazy amount of opportunity as long as it's managed within parameters.
Right.
And there's guidelines and there's integrity. But I would say that in talking industry and everything, Marshall's on calls with large companies every day, really big companies, Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot, Skai, right? And those companies, when we talk with Amazon, we see their decks, those decks are beautiful for a reason, right? There's some help probably there. And we kind of look sometimes to, I would say, certain methodologies of those huge retail media partners to guide a little bit of what we think looks good, what looks great, what things are a little bit obvious, and then that helps guide us a little bit, like the retail networks is a big part.
So let's talk about the future, right? Anybody that's prognosticating today is probably going to be wrong, right? If you were to ask people like what would happen with mobile devices during the early days when they were boxes in our car, I don't think anyone would have guessed that they'd be powerful computers in our pocket, right? When e-commerce started, there was all these big visions of where e-shopping would go. And it took some time and it got there. But as you go and look to the future, maybe as you look to the future of how Marshall is going to, what Marshall is going to look like 5 years from now, what do you think? How are you thinking about that, and how are you kind of preparing your business for that?
I think that as Agentic and AI becomes a bigger part and powerful part of our day-to-day, I actually think it's going to have kind of a funny output, in my opinion. It's going to be that the partnerships will have an even greater emphasis. Knowing that our brands might not rely on us, let's say, as much in terms of the hours spent doing a deck, they will rely on us for the hours spent looking out for their business, what's coming forward, what AMC things are we testing. Walmart display is a big one now, right? Does that make sense to venture there? The strategy and just the partnership will be a bigger emphasis, I think, in 5 years, 10 years, than it was 5 years ago. When we're all on our phones, we're all spending a ton of time in PowerPoints or Google Sheets or whatever, but not all that. All the AI hadn't really been an integrated part of our day. Now, I think in the future, it will be a swing towards, we'll still be using AI, but it'll be a swing towards, well, then what do I value in a partner? It's going to be the honesty, the transparency, that they have my back, right? All of those things that make, Skai and Marshall's partnership, that make Marshall and our brand's partnerships strong, is that the true relationship that you're building. That I think will be the powerful part that brands look to for their agencies in the future. Knowing AI will still be a big growing part of the day-to-day.
And I think it goes back to what you said at the beginning, right? Like, you're now managing 15 retail media networks instead of one. You're now managing hundreds of different ad types in each network versus one. And so the technology gives you the scale to be able to manage all of that and then understand the cross-channel implications of that, whereas before you couldn't do that. So the value only gets stronger to the brand. Their dollars are being used more effectively. And I think the other, maybe easy thing to say is that agencies and technology providers are both going to have to kind of learn how to live in a tokenized world.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
As things become more operational and tokenized, that is going to be more of a form of payment commodity that doesn't exist really today because it's been more either hour-based or service-based or performance-based. And I think time will tell how that ultimately plays out.
Yeah, I agree. Good partnerships do last, right?
They do. And
we've for a while.
Yes. Okay, so Retail Media Thursday, we like to wrap up with rapid fire questions. Yes. These are questions you have not seen.
Okay.
And I'm actually making them up as we go.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry. I can guarantee she has not seen these, all right? So what's your favorite ad type?
Ooh, sponsor brand video.
Why?
As a shopper, it's my favorite. It's back to just consumer behavior. I stop in my tracks when you see a good video or a really bad video. We have a fun thing on our team where it's like ads we clicked and why, or ads we didn't click and why.
Yeah.
Sometimes those videos really show up often in those.
Sounds like a new TikTok channel.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I see that coming.
I remember that one, it was like, they had like a dog and the dog was like wagging his tail and it was like knocking things off of the ad, and the way that they had that image compared to the rest of the ad was just really cool and very unique and different.
Yeah, it also helps distinguish who's just using AI and not really having a whole lot of brand integrity versus ones that are doing a good job representing their brand.
All right, second question. Beyond the big boys, right? You said 15 retail media networks. You said a lot of different, partners are on a lot of retail networks. Once you get past like the Amazon and the Walmart, what's your favorite, maybe niche retail media network?
I would say, that's a good one. I would say Target's Roundel is one that I love, not super niche, but that's one that I really think does a good job with ad delivery and just general user experience. Yeah. They make data collection easy, at least from the user experience side. You kind of trust the data that they're putting forward. The Target's algorithm is straightforward. You can kind of 1 + 1 = 2 in terms of how you invest. Do wish it had more ad types, but that's coming. A lot of it's still managed. But I think Target is one of the, especially with Roundel and the RMS Studio, is one that my team does love working in.
I'm going to give my love to Dollar General.
Oh, okay.
But I'm giving my love to Dollar General because they threw the single best party at Cannes. They hosted a Third Eye Blind for a private concert for 125 people, and it was off the hook. And the best line was when they were introducing the band. They said, "Who thought that Dollar General would ever be hosting a party at Cannes?" And so they kind of owned it.
They have a lot of people buying $1.
Yeah. So this is your ROI. If you're trying to figure out your ROI, this is part of your ROI.
It's a concert in Cannes.
All right. So I'm really going to put you on the spot with this one. All right. What is one wedding gift that you will never return?
Okay, so my husband will laugh when he watches this because I'm a neat freak. And my mom's best friend, my mom's maid of honor, knows me well and got me a KitchenAid hand vac for just the countertop. That's it. And it's that simple. There's expensive things that we got, and it's just this little, I'd whip it out every night, every morning, coffee grounds, after making dinner, and it's my favorite. It's my hyper fixation.
All right.
My husband's gonna have enough of it.
So you know where I'm going. What's one thing you got that you're going to return and you maybe don't want them to know you did it?
Oh, that's an extra good one.
I'll tell you from mine.
Okay, tell me mine.
Because I still remember. We had somebody, we were married in Chicago, and it was the Well Street and Old Town Art Fair.
Okay, oh my gosh.
Somebody got us these hand-blown martini glasses that were not very pretty. And my wife was like, well, I guess we're stuck with them because we can't return them.
Do you still have them?
I don't think they survived all the moves. I don't think they survived all the moves.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think for ours, there's a couple pillows, that we got that are a little gaudy, where it's forever and ever and ever, cursive.
People,
Like, all right,
Didn't register for it, but somebody thought it was cute.
The off-registry ones sometimes. You're like, just stick to the registry. I need those items. But
All right, so what's one thing left on your registry that you wish that you got?
The Dyson vacuum.
Oh,
you know, you had to throw it on there.
Yeah.
I've gone through about every other stick vac, and it's just about time. You know, on the registry, I was like, it's about time to try the big Kahuna. So
yeah,
it's still on there for anyone. Jeff,
if anyone's watching, if anyone's watching, don't give up. It's still there. Kelly Gerrard. Under, I don't even know, where do you go for wedding registry? Is it
Crate and Barrel.
Okay, I was gonna say, I don't even know like where wedding registries are these days.
Yes, it's still there.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate all the years of our partnership, and we will definitely not wait that long to have you back on.
Awesome, thanks Jeff, good to see you.
All right.